RAJMOHAN'S wife, Bankimchandra Chattopadhyay. Chapter 5. A Letter, A Visit to the ZENANA. When Madhav returned from his garden, where he had parted with his cousin, he found a messenger waiting for him, with a letter which he said was Jaruri. Madhav tore it open with eagerness, and devoured its contents. It was from his lawyer at the Sadhu station of his district. We will endeavour to give a literal translation of this epistle, interspersing it with the remarks Madhav made as he read. To Sea of Glory. Your servant has been engaged in conducting your honour's lawsuit at this station with great carefulness, and hopes that he will succeed in all of them. All of them, thought Madhav. You may say so, lawyer, for my cases are all just. But it is not in the nature of our courts to be right in every case. So I fear I must take my lawyer's dictum with some allowance. He is an able fellow, however, and manages cases excellently, I must confess. I heartily wish all this mummery were at an end, but my neighbours must drag me to law. But what next? The letter proceeded. It gives me great pain to have to inform you that this day your aunt has by proxy instituted a suit against you in the principal Sadr Amin court, alleging that her husband's will is a forgery and claiming the whole estate with Oshiloth. My aunt, exclaimed Madhum in astonishment, the letter dropping from his hands. My aunt, see, heavens! And for my whole fortune I a forger. The rest, I shall kick her out of the house. He stood musing for some moments, trembling with rage, but calming himself a little. He picked up the paper and proceeded with it. I do not know who gave her such counsels, but your servant has made many inquiries, knowing well that someone must have counselled it, and he has heard who it is. Great men are there at her back. Counsellors indeed, thought Madhav. Who can they be? He tried to make a guess first, thought one neighbouring Zemindar, then of another, but no one seemed likely, and he resumed reading. But do not think your honour has anything to fear. The will is in truth the real, as I know, and where there is virtue there is victory. But it is necessary to be very cautious. It would be advisable to give wakalatnamas to babus and vakils of the judge's court, as well as to engage another from the Sadr court on necessary occasions. Barristers from the Supreme Court need also be engaged when the parties join issue as well as at the final hearing. Your servant will do all in his power, and will try for the case. Even with his life, he waits your honour's orders. Obedient to orders, Gokul Chandra Das. 1,000 rupees are at present required to meet necessary expenses. Madhav's first thought, after he had finished the perusal of the letter, was to go and seek his aunt, and to hear what explanation she had to give of her strange proceeding. Madhav therefore immediately hurried into the inner apartments, where he found it no very easy task to make himself heard in that busy hour of ZENANA life. There was a servant woman, black, rotund, and eloquent, demanding the transmission to her hands of sundry articles of domestic use, without however making it at all intelligible to whom her demands were particularly addressed. There was another, who boasted similar blessed corporal dimension, but who had thought it beneath her dignity to shelter them from view, and was busily employed, broomstick in hand, in demolishing the little mountains of the skins and stems of sundry culinary vegetables which decorated the flowers, and against which the half-naked dame never aimed a blow but coupled it with a cards on those whose duty it had been to prepare the said vegetables for dressing. A third had ensconced herself in that corner of the yard which formed the grand receptacle of household filth, and was employing all her energies in scouring some brass pots. And as her ancient arms wheeled round in rapid evolution, she scarcely less active engine in her mouth hurled dire anathemas against the unfortunate cook, for the mighty reason that the latter had put the said vessel to their legitimate use, and thus caused the labours which excited the worthy matron's ire. The cook herself, far removed from the scene where both her spiritual and her temporal prospects were being so fiercely dealt with by the excited scourer of the brass pots, was engaged in an angry discussion with an elderly lady, apparently the housewife and governess, the subject of debate being no less interesting and important than the quantity of ghee to be allowed her for the culinary purposes of the night. The honest manufacturer of rice and curry was anxious to secure only just double the quantity that was necessary, wisely deeming it advisable that half should be set apart in secret for her own special benefit and consumption. In another corner might be heard those sounds so suggestive of an agreeable supper, the huge bounty savouring the bodies of fishes doomed to augment the labours of the conscientious cook aforesaid. Several elegant forms might be seen flitting, not often noiselessly, but always gracefully, across the dalans and baranda with dirty earthen lamps lighted in their little hands, and occasionally sending forth the tinkling of the silver maul on their ankles, or a summons to another in a voice which surpassed the silver in delicacy. A couple of urchins, utterly naked and evidently excrescences in the household, thought the opportunity a fitting one for the display of their belligerent propensities, and were making desperate attempts at tearing each other's hair. Some young girls were very clamorously engaged in playing at Agdum Bagdum in the corner of a terrace. Madhav stood for some moments in utter hopelessness of ever making himself heard in this the veriest of babbles. "Will you, you winches?" he cried at length in a key creditable to his lungs. "Will you cease? Can I speak?" The change this short exclamation produced was magical. The vociferations of the dame, whose demands for nameless articles had been hitherto addressed to the air, ceased in the midst of a scream of more than ordinary power, and the black rotten form of her screamer was nowhere to be seen. She of the broomstick threw away the formidable weapon as if stung by an adder, and sought in precipitate flight to shelter her half-naked mass of flesh in the friendly cover of some dark corner. The anathematizing scourer of the brass vessels was cut short in the midst of a very sonorous curse, and both her tongue and her arm were suspended in the middle of half-performed evolutions. The destroyer of the funny tribe also experienced a momentary interruption, but though she mustered courage to resume her task, it was certainly executed with a far smaller expenditure of noise. The preceding divinity of the kitchen abruptly terminated her vocal exertion in favour of ghee and betook to her heels, carrying off in the precipitancy of her flight the entire ghee pot, a bare moiety of which had just formed her demons. The fleeting figures with the lit lamps disappeared in tumultuous flight. little caring that the tinkling of the ornaments in their feet betrayed the very presence they endeavored to conceal. The combat of the sturdy little warriors who fought in nudity and darkness for victory suddenly terminated in flight on both sides. Though the abler general of the two did not fail to fire a returning shot in the shape of a hearty kick at the shins of his antagonist, the little girls too, who had been so merrily playing, rose and followed the said general accompanying him with an ill-suppressed title of hilarity. The scene, which had just exhibited an unparalleled confusion, was suddenly changed into one of utter silence and solitude, and the grave housewife was the only being who stood unmoved and unchanged before the master of the house. Masi, said Madhav, addressing the matron, how is this? My house is very bazaar. Women, son, women, replied the Masi with a benevolent and affectionate smile. It is woman's nature to be screaming. Where is Khuri now, Masi? That is what I was thinking of, was the reply. She has not been seen in the house since morning. Not seen in the house since morning, exclaimed Madhav in amazement. The thing is true then? What is true, son? Replied the maternal aunt. Nothing, I will tell you afterwards. Where is she then? Has anyone seen her anywhere? Ombika, Srimoti, cried the matron, addressing the women who were engaged with the fish and the vessels respectively. Have you seen her anywhere? No, replied it softly. Strange, said the matron. Then, as if addressing the wall, she inquired, has anyone seen her? I met her at the elder house at bathing time, replied a voice from behind the walls. There, exclaimed the matron in surprise. There, in Mathur Dada's house, exclaimed Madhav also, and then muttered between his teeth, a sudden light flashing upon him. Cousin Mathur, can he be the instigator? No, no, it cannot be. I judge wrong. Then speaking out, he said, raising his voice to one of the women present, go to the elder house and see if my aunt is there. If she is, ask her to return, and in case she refuses, know her reasons.